Contamos com o patrocínio do BNDES, da Caixa, do Ministério do Planejamento, do Governo Federal, da Sinergia e da Odebrecht.
Bom, o procedimento é o seguinte: entraremos diretamente em rodas de debate. No total de 3, por 10 minutos cada um. Cada um vai falar 10 minutos, sucessivamente. 3 rodadas de 10 minutos para cada um. Para a gente evitar as palestras mais longas, como a programação é muito apertada, poderia ficar cansativo. Então entramos praticamente no debate. Você tem uma apresentação de 10 minutos, abordando o tema, os outros expositores abordarão por sua vez, pode inclusive comentar temas anteriores. E assim vai acontecer sucessivamente. A ordem é essa ordem que está na mesa, exceto o fato do Brasil fala tudo. Então, começaremos por Vladimir Davidov, da Rússia. Lembrando que o tema dessa mesa, o tema fundamental dessa mesa é a economia política. Essa é a discussão da situação atual no mundo e das perspectivas em termos de política macroeconômica e em termos de economia política.
Queridos amigos, queridos colegas, você ouve?
Não chove na área.
Você ouve?
Ahora sí, gracias. Soy Salvador. Queridos amigos, queridos colegas, ante todo quiero decir que nosotros estudiamos, tratamos de analizar, tratamos de comprender una realidad incipiente. Pienso que no nos damos cuenta de que vivimos una época transitoria con cambios tectónicos, pero que todavía no son concientizadas. BRICS no comienza con el análisis de Goldman Sachs. Para ellos, los países como Brasil, Rusia, India y China eran objetos de su política que viene del occidente tradicional. Para nosotros, los estudiosos rusos, y pienso que brasileños, esos países son sujetos de relaciones internacionales. ¿Se hace la traducción? Bueno, entonces, se dice con razón que el peso creciente de los países, de esos 4 países en primera fase de desarrollo del proyecto, es un intento, una necesidad histórica de poner en correspondencia el peso económico creciente con la influencia política en la escena internacional. Partiendo de eso, es difícil hablar de contenido económico solamente del proyecto BRICS. Pienso que a los sucesos ya tenemos una historia de desarrollo de BRICS. Podemos decir que comienza el proyecto en 2006 con el primer encuentro de ministros de Relaciones Exteriores y después como cumbre que comienza en 2009. Ya está cumplida primera fase, digamos la primera ronda de BRICS. Se nota que en primer plano aparecen inquietudes económicas, lo que se subraya por la crisis global y con desgaste de los mecanismos de regulación económica global. Esto está reconocido en todas las alturas, en los centros económicos tradicionales y en los centros emergentes. Los mecanismos creados en Bretton Woods resulta que no son capaces de cumplir la función reguladora en la economía mundial. Aparecen otros mecanismos. Todavía no tenemos una receta. Es una búsqueda generalizada. Pero el proyecto BRICS, las estructuras, la asociación BRICS o la coalición BRICS puede convertirse en uno de los mecanismos nuevos de regulación global económica. Para cumplir esa función, la asociación BRICS tiene que tener ciertos mecanismos. Yo soy bastante crítico en mi análisis en lo que se refiere al desarrollo del proyecto BRICS. Pienso que se habla demasiado. Pienso que se ponen muchas iniciativas. Se dice con razón que hay un exceso de formatos dentro de la asociación BRICS. En total 22, según los cálculos del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores de la Federación Rusa. Pero la velocidad de aparición de nuevas iniciativas, de ampliación de la agenda de los BRICS es mucho mayor que la posibilidad de creación de mecanismos de cumplimiento, de puesta en marcha, en práctica, de los mecanismos correspondientes. Por eso, para mí, es de mayor importancia el imperativo de concentración en las prioridades básicas, incluso económicos, dentro del proyecto BRICS. Por eso, no se puede perder tiempo en la formación del Banco de Desarrollo de los BRICS. Es una estructura de por sí misma que debe resolver el problema de ausencia de institucionalidad dentro de los bancos de BRICS. Es imperativo de formación de la Unión de Bolsa de Valores, que ya comenzó. Es imperativo de avanzar con el proyecto de crear fundación de reserva monetaria de recursos líquidos en los marcos de BRICS, especialmente teniendo en cuenta las lecciones de la última crisis económica global. Es importante avanzar en la integración física de los países BRICS. Hay una gran falta en eso. Integración física no como integración económica, porque a mi juicio, y en eso tengo que finalizar mi primera intervención, a mi juicio, BRICS es una asociación de nuevo tipo. No puede diseñarse como un bloque integracionista económico tradicional, por diferentes razones que podemos discutir, pero sí puede formarse como un mecanismo de colaboración económica por proyectos tocando, resolviendo las inquietudes, las necesidades prioritarias de esos países. Una de las cosas prioritarias es avance, una presión, digamos un lobby fuerte para cumplir la decisión del año 2010, quiere decir aumento de cuota de voces, de cuota de capital dentro del Fondo Monetario Internacional. Eso fue acordado, pero hay muchas trabas en ese camino. Yo pienso que una de las tareas prioritarias de BRIC es doblar los esfuerzos para resolver el problema que parece ya resolvido. Bueno, yo quiero terminar en eso. Espero que voy a tener la posibilidad de desarrollar algunas ideas más. Muchísimas gracias.
Eu vou passar a palavra imediatamente ao Santos Perrota. Tem 10 minutos na parte inicial. Santos Perrota é Vídeo.
Thank you very much, Jose Carlos. Since you've given us only 10 minutes, and I need to make 4 points and will give myself 2.5 minutes each, and I will run through the
10 minutes now, but we have to end.
No, I know. But I want to run through my main points as quickly as possible so that I can come back to those later on. That's really the point I was making. You know, the relationship between any set of countries naturally has 3 or 4 dimensions. One is trade, the third is investment, the second is investment, the third is finance, which is the lubricant for investment and trade, and finally then you have other kinds of economic cooperation. And looking at the experience of the last 5 or 6 years of the BRICS, it seems that most of the focus so far has been on the other economic cooperation, as opposed to the trade, the investment, and the finance. Now, yesterday the Brazilian speaker from the government rightly pointed out that there is a fair bit of trade between the BRICS countries. China is one of the largest trade partners of each of the BRICS, but that's not the case for China. The other way around is not true. So there's clearly one issue out there, which I think we should come back to as a theme. For India, we know that our trade has grown with China very, very rapidly, but one of the most serious problems with the trade is a very serious trade imbalance. Now, that's a problem, and it's constantly being brought up in the China strategic economic dialogue. There's another dimension of the trade, which was pointed out by the Brazilian speaker yesterday, which was that there is a certain commodity composition of that trade between the BRICS on the one hand and China on the other. Most of the other, meaning non-China BRICS, are exporting commodities and importing manufactured goods from China. Now that's a pattern of composition of trade, which in a sense is reminiscent of a period which I think we all want to forget. So clearly there is an issue there as well. And this is a problem in a sense, and that needs to be fixed. Let me turn to the second issue of investment. Because in an increasingly globalizing economy, world economy, and an increasingly integrated international economy, a very significant part of international trade actually takes place through investments. It's intra-firm trade is a very significant and a growing part of total trade. Particularly this applies to manufacturers. But if you look at the data perhaps for investment among the BRICS by one BRIC country and another, you'll find that the size of that investment is not particularly large. So one of the most important dimensions of what would be called a close integrated relationship doesn't exist. So that's my second point. Let me turn to my third, which is finance. Finally, after 5 or 6 years of discussion, we now have two mechanisms being put in place, hopefully in Fortaleza, in the summit that is going to take place in July here, where a BRICS bank will be created, which will be hopefully a lubricant of infrastructure investment, which will be facilitated as a result. So it could be a lubricant for investment, which could perhaps later on become the lubricant for more trade. But we have to wait to see. And the other dimension of the finance, of course, is the BRICS Reserve Fund, which is being planned to be created. But the outlines of that and the uses of that are still to be made public. At least I don't have any much information about that. So we're really only just getting to the point where the real dimensions of economic integration between the BRICS can be created. So we are at a sweet spot, but we've got to wait and see how this is going to turn out. It's not surprising, which brings me to the fourth point, which is that most of the cooperation between the BRICS countries that has been talked about and happened in the last 5 to 6 years is what I would call other economic cooperation, and I'll just list them and I will stop. And we can come back to these. And there is a long list, there is no question about it, and it is a good and impressive list. There is, for instance, some cooperation in respect of drugs and pharmaceuticals. Very recently, in the last week itself, in fact, at the World Health Assembly, at the WHO, the BRICS countries met and the ministers were there, and there is, of course, a fair bit of trade that's taking place in drugs and pharmaceuticals, and each of the 4 countries, in fact, have significant public procurement mechanisms which provide provision, which make provision for possibly some cooperation. A second dimension of this other economic cooperation is, of course, a whole series of things that happen alongside or as parallel tracks to the BRICS summit. There is, for instance, a customs cooperation and a trade facilitation mechanism which has been put in place, and that is necessary because obviously you will not get too much trade if there are blockages and there are all kinds of bureaucratic and procedural problems associated with customs and so on between countries, and those have to be sorted out. So there is that facilitation. Second, there is a BRICS business forum, which is a so-called track-free approach, where, and very recently, in the last couple of summits, we've had the Business Council, the BRICS Business Council has been created. And in the last one, apparently, in the last summit, there were 600 companies from the 4 BRICS countries which were participating. There's another dimension which is the BRICS cooperatives. So there are cooperatives in existence in each of the BRICS countries, and for example in China there are 50,000 companies in the cooperative system. India, I know, has a very significant cooperative banking system, and there have been meetings of the cooperatives. And then there has been the competition forum. That means there are anti-monopoly and pro-competitive organizations in each one of the countries, and those. There are other forms of cooperation where, 5 cities from each of the 5 countries, Mumbai, Qingdao, Durban, Rio, and Petersburg, have come together to exchange experiences about the organizations. BRICS has come to be recognized as a bloc in the G20 and in the IMF. There is some cooperation taking place in the universities, the Brazilian program of Science Without Borders, and so on. So these are the various ways in which other economic cooperation has been happening. But the meat, and I'll close with this, the meat is missing. There's not a lot of trade. There's precious little investment. FDI is what I'm thinking of, because as I said, foreign direct investment by one region to another country can become the mechanism of enhancing trade. And third, finance has been completely missing so far, and we are now in the process of finalizing the negotiations for creating the bank and the reserve fund. So there is clearly a future ahead for BRICS, and I remain reasonably hopeful for it. Thank you.
Obrigado. Deu uma visão interessante de coisas que já estão acontecendo, embora não seja aquilo que é alguma coisa interessante já está acontecendo no meu grupo. Mas depois voltar. Vamos a Daniel. China, obviamente. Quem tem dúvida que é a representante da China.
Good morning, everyone. As the youngest speaker here, I'm very honorable to give some opinion on China's economy and BRICS. So, as everybody knows, that China has experienced an online economic growth, and as a feature of Shanghai and the shoes, this part of the rural area has developed in the last 20 years. At the same time, China also suffered enough from pollution, poverty, and compared with its big development on infrastructure, that is really a big shock to everybody. And at the same time, there are a lot of interregional differences in China, and almost 55% people are employed in area less than 10% of national area. So last year, China's GDP increased to $9.4 trillion US, and its growth rate, compared with other big economies, so maybe China is outlier here. But at the same time, we know that basically the exports growth rate, we all decreased after 2010. But China didn't experience the net decrease. But basically, we know that last year, the year before last year, China experienced the first the first drop of FDI to China. So it surprised everybody, but luckily last year, the inflow of FDI to China increased to a new high record level. At the same time, we know that the financial crisis also influenced the real economy. The industrial value-added growth rate also decreased a lot after the financial crisis. So we BRICS behaved not so bad compared to the G7 group. Our GDP growth rate is not very low, but last year, maybe lots of countries are not so good. So, and China also experiences its first decline of GDP growth rate in the last last 6 quarters. So our question may be how to understand China's economy and what will China do for BRICS and what will BRICS cooperate in the near future. So everybody knows about China's macroeconomy could be stylized as maybe high investment and low consumption share, and high exports and imports and large spending by the government. But the total factory productivity decreased since 2000. And while understanding China's economy, especially when we compare with other big economies like Russia and India, we also mention about the institutions and growth. And here maybe China benefits a lot from the economic decentralization, which makes the incentive right for individuals and firms. But at the same time, we have very centralized political systems. And it also plays a positive role as making the incentive right for the local leaders to promote economic growth. At the same time, there are also a lot of social distortions here. So basically, we know physical decentralization in China after 1992's tax-sharing reform is also good. Basically, there are bigger gap between local expenditure and revenue. And we also know that the tax structures are not so good as other countries. Basically, as the housing market was not taken as the most important local taxes, Chinese local government has a lot of incentive to sell their lands to make money for local development. And political centralization gives local governments incentive for yardstick competition to promote economic growth. At the same time, China's economy is based on relationships, we call it 关系, instead of contracts. So the role of relationship is decreasing, especially in more developed regions, but the relation-based society also plays a very important role in China's economy. So now, while we look maybe forward for the next 5 to 10 years, we know that firstly, China has very large local debt risks. At the same time, the shadow banks expanded to an unknowable level, and the real economy very low investment incentive by private economies. At the same time, China started the new type organization plan, which calls for more investment on infrastructure and poverty reduction. At the same time, we also will struggle for the inequality, as the newest data shows that the Gini coefficient of China increased to 0.49 by official data, but some researchers, experts found that the ratio is more than 0.52, and the latest data based on survey of housing and other wealth information shows that the Gini coefficient is nearly 0.61. Compared with the big progress of Brazil in decreasing inequality, China did a very lousy job in the last 10 to 15 years on its inequality. So when we trying to understand Chinese economy and to try to face the challenges of Chinese economy, we also think about the cooperation between BRICS. So firstly, the local debt of China, the total amount is not so big. It's only, the total amount is only 7.89 trillion yuan, amount of $3 trillion US. But the problem is basically we know that the incentive is quite bad because Chinese local governments were not allowed to issue their own debt, debts before 2008. And all of this started from China's 4 trillion yuan stimulus package after 2008. And it increased from 10.9 trillion yuan renminbi to 17.9 trillion yuan. So nearly 67% increase in past 2 years. At the same time, all of these debts are guaranteed by local governments, and some of them are issued by the governments, but there are also a large amount of them issued by the city investment corporate bonds, or they will also have some new organization called financing platform, which plays a very important role for the increasing of local debts. So here, the 17.9 trillion renminbi is based on the audit by the government, but basically there are still a lot of implicit debts. Nobody knows how much it is. So I guess here, think about the financial crisis after 2008, especially the government debts and the local debts here. It's very important for BRICS to have a tighter fiscal discipline. And secondly, we may do a lot on inequality reduction. At the same time, while thinking about the possibility of establishing BRIC banks, something like that, we may also think about the banking efficiency in China. So basically here, we may also try to increase or try to cooperate on increasing banking efficiency. And while China started its new urbanization plan, and maybe India also put a lot on the investment, maybe we have a lot of chances to cooperate on infrastructure and other aspects. And the next cooperation BRICS may do maybe about the cooperation between universities and research groups. I'm from the best study center of Chinese economy in China, but we know not very much about the BRICS, and there are not so many research on that. So I guess it's a rather important research should be proposed, really pushed by the governments and by universities as well. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Ian. Agora, passar a palavra à Zigana Maharaj.
So, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the organizers. I very much like the opening comments. Want to also indicate a huge amount of alignment and resonance with the terms of reference that Professor Aziz drafted for us. And very much like our colleague from Russia, I also want to share with you a perspective from South Africa, which I would extend into Africa as well, by indicating that we also take the view that BRICS did not start with Goldman Sachs. But what it did provide to us was a convenient way at an appropriate time of being able to mobilize ourselves and act together. The antecedents to BRICS, especially in academic debate, draws also from the non-aligned movement and shows a potential for development which runs contrary to the more dominant and hegemonic project that engulfs the globe today. So the comments I will make is very much aligned along that perspective. So, by way of starting, I think a colleague in the field of economics has presented to us a very interesting text, which I'm sure is hugely popular, especially in the part of the world that I'm currently located in. And this is Thomas Piketty's work on capital in the 21st century. I want to just use the data that he's provided, not that he is the first to raise the issues that he raises in the book, but what he does is provide to us in a popular form a very graphic illustration of changes over the long term. And I think it will be incumbent upon us to draw lessons from looking at the longer sweep of history and not merely locate ourselves in the current. So if we look across the 2 millennia, we see different parts, different territories of the world occupying different shares of gross domestic output. In this, you will notice there are patterns, but more importantly, there are significant changes that are taking place. And I want to encourage at least the message that what we are part of has a huge amount of potential built into it. But as with most potential, it is not a ready given solution that a transition will happen. So, within this, I want to maybe raise at least 3 major challenges. And for this, I'll draw on the work of, amongst others, Emmanuel Wallerstein, David Harvey, and a recent paper also from Boston University. And the first one I raise from Emmanuel Wallerstein. And here is a warning to us, because there are those amongst us who actually see BRICS, as I mentioned with a link with the non-aligned movement, as being in the avant-garde of anti-imperialist struggles. And there are those, quite to the contrary, who think of BRICS as the sub-imperialist agents of the true north. In other words, the existing trilateral between North America, Western Europe, and Japan. I'm increasingly finding, at least in the research, that currently we can argue both. And it's important for at least the countries, as we begin to work together more coherently, to define where we stand in this wider struggle. At the BRICS Academic Forum, as Ambassador Mr. Flavio mentioned yesterday, it's important now to move beyond just comparing our countries individually to each other, to start talking about BRICS as a collective entity. So it's towards this direction that I step. And here maybe, instead of quoting Piketty to you, I'll quote David Harvey's review of Piketty's work. And here's an absolute statement in those terms. Free market capitalism, in other words, what Professor Assisi refers to as neoliberal capitalism, in the absence of any major redistributive interventions on the part of the state, produces anti-democratic oligarchies. And this is true in terms of the regions that we are located within, and also in terms of the statistics available to us that show things like anti-competitive practices and as well inequalities that rise. So, I think we often hear the rhetoric of the BRICS moving away from a Washington consensus. But then when we talk about the instruments that the BRICS intends using, we often fall back and use the same metrics. And those are the metrics of the Bretton Woods institutions. And I think it's important for us, especially at the level of big scholars, analysts, intellectuals involved in this task, that we actually step beyond the constraints of what that language provides us. So, again, I want to raise another scholar with you, Francois Chenet's work. And when we talk of the success of the neoliberal model, I want to remind people, especially coming from the southernmost point of Africa, that this, what is known as the longest unbroken phase of accumulation, only applies to the trilateral and the OECD countries. And it's very important that what we have in our countries are arranged, and it still remains so, of vast levels of underdevelopment. And within this, we also have an ongoing contestation, domestic, regional, and global, within the BRICS, about what development actually means. Is development merely chasing GDP expansion at the peril of destroying the planet that we inhabit? Or does the BRICS actually afford us the chance to break free of that paradigm and build a better world? And towards this end, maybe a reminder from a long time ago, 1851, a small letter written from Friedrich Engels to Karl Marx. You will know it from its more famous version when Marx produced the 18 Brumaire. And that is causing everything to be reenacted twice over. Once as a grand tragedy, and the second time as a rotten farce. This is my incredible worry, that if we don't break both from the language and the practice of neoliberalism within our countries, no matter how we explain it, we will reproduce that history which has come before us. So I would argue that we need to seriously consider not allowing our future to merely be the reproduction of history, and that BRICS has available to it the alternative of responding positively to planetary boundaries through local innovation and productive systems. In this, we must embrace the heterodox practice that defines the BRICS individually. That's what we mean by the type of statistics the colleague from China shared with us just now, the issues raised by the colleague from India as well as Russia. For us to make this sustainable and long-lasting, we really must encourage a wider pluralism in how economics is considered. And I mean this as a field and as a discipline. No matter what we do with the changes at policy level, they are temporal. If we continue to use the same orthodox neoclassical textbook in teaching our students, we are not changing economics. And what we should be doing is encouraging the slogan at the bottom. I'm sure some colleagues will recognize where it comes from. But leading to the slogan, we've got to encourage experimentation in new ways of finding solutions to our very particular problems. These solutions are not in the textbooks. We need to monitor, evaluate, and learn from our experiences domestically and then inside the BRICS between each other. It's only through sharing and cooperation in that level that we can build, through BRICS, a better world for us all. In doing so, we will actually give credibility to the idea that one of the strongest growing countries in the BRICS has followed for a longer period than most of us would remember. And that is shaping theory from the facts. So I thank you very much.
Obrigado, Brasileiro. Eu chamo agora o professor Teste Garcia Munhoz, Durante.
Bom dia a todos, a saudação a todos os participantes da mesa e aos presentes, aos outros presentes, e digo que discutir uma questão ligada aos BRICS traz uma série de preocupações. Mas traz uma série de preocupações porque nós estamos num grupo de países que se reúnem com propósitos assim, muito determinados com relação ao futuro, mas países que têm diferenciações muito grandes entre si. Então, o que a gente nota, por exemplo, que questões assim, institucionais, de questões objetivas como o problema de dependência de capitais, fazem com que os países tenham um grau de liberdade diferenciado no contexto dos BRICS. Então, eu vejo, por exemplo, o caso brasileiro, em que nós temos a dependência da situação do capital financeiro, e isso aí tem implicações muito grandes em todas as decisões internas de política econômica em geral. Política monetária, cambial, etc., e tem implicações na economia real. Então, a minha preocupação inicial era o seguinte: aproveitar o primeiro tempo para falar sobre um inimigo comum e que está muito presente dentro do Brasil, que é a questão do liberalismo que se produziu e a dependência de capitais financeiros, capitais de curto prazo. Então, quando eu vejo esse contexto, os países do BRICS têm grau de liberdade diferenciados. E quando olho o Brasil, eu sinto como se nós estivéssemos como um pássaro se debatendo preso numa gaiola, tentando encontrar uma forma de sair do quê? Desses condicionamentos que esses últimos 25 anos, 30 anos praticamente, trouxeram a partir do centro para a periferia. Então, eu queria falar uma coisa: como nasceu esse inimigo comum, esse inimigo terrível, que nos impede, nos limita as coisas, que tem implicações nas decisões políticas, nas decisões econômicas, que imobilizam o país nessas questões. E eu acho que a gente precisa voltar um pouco no tempo para ver como que o liberalismo se reimplantou no mundo e como que depois ele chegou e se espalhou para a periferia, para os países menores. A questão que eu acho que é bom nós colocarmos é que até os anos 80 nós tínhamos um sistema financeiro paralelo, que era do euro-moedas, financiando os devedores. E os devedores eram aqueles países que, nas relações internacionais, diante de uma ação pragmática dos países centrais, os países como o Brasil que assumiram uma dívida internacional que era a conta do petróleo. Então, a contrapartida dos exportadores da OPEP se deu não nos países ricos, como muitos foram à Conferência de Argel de 74, se não me engano, achando que era um novo mundo, os ricos vão ficar pobres e os pobres vão ficar ricos. Não. As economias centrais seguraram a atividade durante 2 anos e, com isso, estimularam ao mesmo tempo que países como o Brasil crescessem com endividamento, que era um novo projeto. Um projeto fantasioso, mas um projeto que se dizia assim como uma nova descoberta, crescer com endividamento. Bom, o euro-moedas financiou até que nos anos 80, todo mundo sabe que em 82 os países quebraram os devedores, porque os bancos não quiseram mais financiar. A partir desse momento, o que aconteceu? Os bancos internacionais do euro-moedas perderam clientes de primeira ordem, que não podiam mais pagar, que tinham quase $1 bilhão de dívidas e que pagavam de juros. Só os países importadores de capitais, os maiores devedores, pagavam em torno de $60 bilhões anuais. Quando os bancos perderam esses clientes, começa a história que nos afeta até hoje. Por quê? Porque os dois sistemas, euromoedas com os sistemas bancários nacionais, se fundiram nos anos 80. E quando se fundiram, descobriram que a massa de recursos acumulados na mão dos bancos e a partir dos saldos da OPEP era tão grande que a economia do mundo real não comportava a junção dos dois sistemas, querendo financiar o mesmo ponto que seria a produção e o comércio. Bom, nesse momento, o que acontece? Começa a desregulamentação financeira. A desregulamentação financeira, o que é? Se nós não podemos remunerar esse capital acumulado a partir do financiamento do setor produtivo do real, nós temos que financiar a partir de rendas criadas fora do sistema produtivo. E aí, com a desregulamentação, o sistema bancário internacional, o que aconteceu? Começou a operar fora das linhas tradicionais de financiamento bancário e começou a operar fora das operações tradicionais de empréstimo, etc. E aí houve uma explosão. Por quê? Porque não tem mais regulamentação, não tem mais aquela necessidade imperiosa de encontrar clientes nas fábricas ou financiando contas de países. E aí nós tivemos uma explosão de financiamento. Não tanto o financiamento do produtivo, que foi acompanhando o PIB mundial, mas vieram as operações novas, como na área de derivativo, operações com swaps, com opções, etc. Operações de altíssimo risco, mas se multiplicavam em relação ao PIB mundial de maneira espantosa. Então surge um sistema paralelo. Quando vem a União Europeia, ela vem já com alguns resquícios do liberalismo que avançaram no final dos anos 80. E a primeira coisa que se fez na União Europeia foi criar um projeto de médio prazo para surgir uma moeda única, um banco central único, e que os países fossem condicionando suas políticas. Ora, em 94 vem uma definição clara. Do quê? Que os bancos centrais da Europa, dentro da União Europeia, dentro dos que aderissem ao euro, e o sistema de bancos centrais europeus, eles não estariam subordinados a nenhum tipo de autoridade. Alguns casos, em algumas políticas, ainda se submetia aquilo lá à autoridade da comunidade. Em outros casos dos bancos centrais, nem os bancos centrais, nem os seus elementos ficariam submetidos a qualquer tipo de autoridade interna ou externa. Então, era a filosofia dos bancos centrais europeus com plena liberdade, era a independência dos bancos centrais. Depois disso, o que nós tivemos? Nós tivemos na União Europeia, nós tivemos os países colocados sob os critérios de convergência, tentando atender aqueles pré-requisitos de déficit público e de inflação, para que chegassem em 1999 baixo nos déficits, inflação controlada, etc., com os critérios de convergência. Agora, o que é interessante nisso aí? Eu não vou falar agora, que o tempo é muito curto nesse aqui, como é que isso aí chegou a nós, a periferia, a segunda etapa. Mas o que é interessante é que quando o liberalismo entra e dá prevalência, predomínio absoluto da autoridade monetária sobre os governos, por quê? Os governos, segundo o relatório do PIS, os governos não sabiam governar. Por isso que nós tínhamos estagnação, etc. Então, naquele momento, houve uma subversão institucional, porque os governos perderam poderes, e perderam poderes compulsoriamente dentro dos mecanismos da União Europeia. E nesse momento aí, o que nós tivemos é que logo em seguida a essas decisões de 94, em que os bancos centrais se tornavam absolutamente independentes, nós tivemos outras decisões, outros pactos menores, em que um deles tirava dos estados a própria administração do mercado de trabalho. A própria regra do mercado de trabalho se tirou dos governos, entregando à comunidade. Então, o tratado de Amsterdã e o tratado de crescimento, uma coisa assim, de 1997. Então, nós estamos observando que o sistema financeiro, ele assumiu o controle das decisões comunitárias na área da Europa. Agora, o que é interessante, e o que aconteceu? Ora, a Europa passou estagnada na década de 90. Depois do fortalecimento dos bancos centrais, né? Depois de que o sistema estava desregulado, passou uma crise financeira de 1991-93. Com os bancos centrais já com grande poder, a crise financeira de 92-93 se diria assim, não, é a incerteza do euro, etc. 97 e 98, uma nova crise financeira, apesar do poder que os bancos centrais tinham. Então nós estamos vendo que o liberalismo e a centralização de poder fora da área da administração pública tradicional, ela não gerou estabilidade, não gerou crescimento. Na década, a Europa esteve estagnada. Na década, nós tivemos duas crises financeiras e teríamos a terceira na década seguinte, que é a crise do subprime. O que significa? O que significa que essa ascensão do poder do capital financeiro e a forma como você transferiu a autoridade para a autoridade monetária, para os centrais, não trouxe progresso, não trouxe nenhuma alternativa nova. Traria isso sim, uma grande independência para os países periféricos na etapa seguinte.
Obrigado. Eu vou pedir a Marina para ler quais foram os nossos patrocinadores.
Bom dia, gente. A Conferência BRICS no século XXI conta com o patrocínio do BNDES, da Caixa, do Ministério do Planejamento, do Governo Federal, da Sinergia e Odebrecht. Lembramos a todos que este evento está sendo transmitido online, então vocês podem acessar o www.brics21.com.br para ter acesso a tudo que está acontecendo. Lembramos ainda que esta atividade está engajada com a proteção do meio ambiente. Convidamos a todos a unirem-se. Protejam o meio ambiente, valorizem a vida, façam a sua parte. Obrigada.
Bom, nós começamos com um atraso de quase 1 hora. A gente vai fazer, está um pouco perdido. 10
When it's returned, just returned.
Nós começamos essa rodada com 1 hora de atraso. Nós temos um almoço que é marcado para meio-dia e pouco. Se chegar atrasado dentro, promete muita qualidade. Então, em vez de 3 rodadas, vou fazer uma segunda rodada de 12 minutos, que aí a gente encerra a segunda rodada de 12 minutos. Mais ou menos. Então, vamos recomeçar, portanto, com Vladimir Davidov. Tá?
Muchísimas gracias. Quiero mencionar que en nuestro instituto se editó un libro. Tenemos posibilidad de editar en español incluso. Y si a alguien le interesa, se llama BRICS y Latinoamérica, posicionamiento e interacción. Es recién editado, está en la mesa de presidencia. Si alguien tiene interés, le ofrezco. Entonces yo quiero continuar la intervención de mi colega brasileño, teniendo en cuenta, y los economistas lo conocen muy bien,